Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Kristen Welker in Washington, where we're monitoring multiple breaking news stories. Markets had another volatile day on Wall Street. Stocks closed slightly higher, but all the major indices were lower on the week amid continued uncertainty about President Trump's tariff policy and the U.S. jobs report falling just short of expectations. We will get to all of that in just a minute. But at any moment, New Mexico officials are set to provide an update on the investigation into the death of Gene Hackman and his wife. The 95-year-old Oscar-winning actor and his wife were found dead in their Santa Fe home last week. His wife was found in the bathroom near an open prescription pill bottle. Officials previously said there are no signs of foul play, but the circumstances were suspicious enough to warrant an investigation. We are going to bring you that news conference as it begins, and we are anticipating it will begin any moment now. I do want to get to NBC News correspondent Dana Griffin, who joins me from Santa Fe, where that news conference is going to get underway. Dana, there are a lot of unanswered questions, right?
Absolutely. A lot of unanswered questions. We hope that this press conference will unveil the big mystery. What happened to Gene Hackman, his wife, Betsy Arakawa, and their dog? Right now, we're going to hear from investigators from not only the sheriff's office, the medical investigator's office, and the fire department. As you can see behind me, you have Sheriff Adon there walking out, about to take the podium. It's been 9 days since those bodies have been found in their Santa Fe home, the couple. And I'm going to step out of the way so we can listen to the sheriff as he gets underway here with this press conference.
Yep. Officials updating us on the death of Gene Hackman and his wife in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Let's listen in.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sheriff Adon Mendoza, Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office. With me today is Dr. Heather Jarrell, Chief Medical Investigator for the New Mexico Office of the Medical Investigator. Dr. Aaron Phipps, New Mexico State Public Health Veterinarian, New Mexico Department of Health, and also Chief Brian Moya, Santa Fe City Fire Department. This investigation started on February 26th with the discovery of Mr. Hackman and Miss Arakawa and their dog at their residence. I just want to do a short recap and then touch on some new information. As we know, both individuals tested negative for carbon monoxide. City Fire conducted tests and deemed scene safe for deputies to conduct their investigation. The preliminary pacemaker interrogation results were released last week, and I'll let Dr. Jarrell touch more specifically on those results. The gas company New Mexico, they also did an analysis of the residence, and they found one minor leak in a single burner on the kitchen stove, which was 0.33% of room air, which was pretty minute and insignificant. Since that time, Xena, the deceased dog, has been taken for necropsy at the Veterinary Diagnostic Services, and we'll be awaiting those results. Let's speak a little bit in reference to the timeline for Betsy Arakawa. We know from our investigation that on February 9th, 2025, she picked up Xena from Gruta Veterinary Hospital. There was a procedure that was done with the dog, which may explain why the dog was in a crate at the residence. Let's move on to February 11th, 2025. Mrs. Arakawa had an email conversation with her massage therapist at about 11:21 a.m. Moving on into the afternoon, Ms. Arakawa was at the Sprouts Farmers Market between 3:30 and 4:15 p.m. Ms. Arakawa was seen on surveillance video at the CVS Pharmacy in Santa Fe from 4:12 to 4:20 p.m. She then stopped at a local pet food store at about 4:54 p.m. Her car was seen on surveillance, and the remote control clicker that is assigned to her and her vehicle was used to enter the subdivision to gain access to the gated community at 5:15 p.m. Numerous emails were unopened on her computer on February 11th. There was no additional outgoing communication from her or known activity after February 11th, 2025. cell phone information, and the cell phone data is pending. We're working with state police to get the information from those phones, but our investigation shows that all the last known communication and activity from Ms. Arakawa was on February 11th. I'm going to go ahead and turn over the podium to Dr. Gerald. I would ask that everybody refrain from asking questions until everybody has provided their statements. I'll step up to the podium, and then we'll go ahead and field questions from the media. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. I'm Dr. Heather Gerald, the Chief Medical Examiner for New Mexico at the Office of the Medical Investigator. I'd like to begin by stating that it is unprecedented for the Office of the Medical Investigator to make public statements about death investigations. However, the circumstances surrounding these two deaths require accurate dissemination of important information. I've also spoken with the Hackman family prior to this conference, who are aware of the autopsy findings and conclusions and are aware of this conference. On Thursday, February 27th, I performed an autopsy on Mr. Gene Hackman. Medical examiner Dr. Daniel Gallego at the Office of the Medical Investigator performed a full autopsy on Miss Betsy Arakawa Hackman. Also on Thursday, February 27th. By report, Miss Arakawa Hackman's legal name is Betsy Hackman, which is how she will be referred to hereafter. The cause of death for Miss Betsy Hackman, aged 65 years, is hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. The manner of death is natural. Autopsy examination and full-body postmortem CT demonstrated no findings of trauma internally or externally, with microscopic findings consistent with hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. Laboratory testing was positive for hantavirus at a clinical lab, with required confirmation testing positive at Scientific Laboratories Division. Testing for COVID-19, influenza, and other common respiratory viruses was negative. Testing for carbon monoxide was negative. There were no other significant natural disease findings. Pills present on scene were thyroid medication, which were being taken as prescribed and is not currently a concern for a contributory cause of death. The cause of death for Mr. Gene Hackman, aged 95 years, is hypertensive and atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, with Alzheimer's disease as a significant contributory factor. Autopsy examination and a full-body postmortem CT examination demonstrated no acute findings of internal or external trauma and showed severe heart disease, including multiple surgical procedures involving the heart, evidence of prior heart attacks, and severe changes of the kidneys due to chronic high blood pressure. Examination of the brain showed advanced Alzheimer's disease, as well as blood vessel changes in the brain secondary to chronic high blood pressure. Laboratory testing performed at Scientific Laboratories Division was negative for COVID-19, influenza, and other common respiratory viruses. Testing for hantavirus was negative. Testing for carbon monoxide was negative. Additionally, there were no autopsy findings concerning for hantavirus infection. I have been asked when death occurred for these individuals. There is no reliable scientific method to accurately determine the exact time or date of death. Mr. Hackman's initial pacemaker data revealed cardiac activity on February 17th, with subsequent pacemaker interrogation demonstrating an abnormal rhythm of atrial fibrillation on February 18th, which was the last record of heart activity. Based on this information, it is reasonable to conclude that Mr. Hackman probably died around February 18th. Based on the circumstances, it is reasonable to conclude that Ms. Hackman passed away first, with February 11th being the last time that she was known to be alive. Lastly, clinically, hantavirus infection is characterized by flu-like symptoms consisting of fever, muscle aches, cough, sometimes vomiting and diarrhea that can progress to shortness of breath and cardiac or heart failure and lung failure. This occurs after a 1 to 8 week exposure to excrement from a primarily particular mouse species that carries hantavirus. The mortality of hantavirus, the mortality rate of the hantavirus strain in the Southwest is about 38 to 50%. The hantavirus strains in the United States are not transmissible from person to person. And so this is an appropriate time to segue to Dr. Aaron Phipps, the state public health veterinarian with the New Mexico Department of Health. But before I do so, I'd like to kindly ask for everyone to please respect the privacy that Mr. Gene Hackman, Miss Betsy Hackman, and their family and friends deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gerald. I will now provide additional information about hantaviruses in New Mexico. There are many different types of hantaviruses found worldwide. These viruses are zoonotic, meaning they are transmitted from animals to humans. Hantaviruses are carried by rodents. The hantavirus found in New Mexico, the Sin Nombre virus, is found throughout the state, primarily in deer mice, but in other rodents as well. Hantavirus pulmonary syndrome is a rare disease caused by hantaviruses, but a small number of human infections are found every year in New Mexico. Over the past 5 years, New Mexico has confirmed between 1 and 7 hantavirus infections in humans each year. Through the end of 2024, we have identified 136 infections over the past 50 years in New Mexico residents. 5 of these in Santa Fe County. This is a serious disease. 42% of these infections here in New Mexico were fatal. Most transmission occurs around the patient's residence or workplace, and the New Mexico Department of Health typically conducts an environmental investigation at the residence of all hantavirus cases in our jurisdiction. This can help identify specific areas that may pose higher risk, providing insight into where transmission may have occurred and how to prevent future infections. On March 5th, the New Mexico Department of Health staff conducted a risk assessment of the property, including the main residence, as well as other structures on the property. This was critically important to address concerns about health risks to first responders, as well as to inform any prevention measures needed to protect the family and other individuals entering the property in the future. We assessed the risk of exposure in the primary residence as low, similar to other well-maintained houses in New Mexico. We did identify signs of rodent entry in other structures on the property and provided information and resources about reducing the risk of hantavirus transmission related to those areas. Hantavirus can be transmitted to people through rodent urine, droppings, or saliva, so it is important to take special steps when cleaning up after rodents. Avoiding contact with or breathing in aerosolized rodent urine or feces, especially in a poorly ventilated area, is key. Detailed guidance can be found on the New Mexico Department of Health and the CDC websites, but I will provide a very brief summary now. It is important to use gloves and a well-fitting N95 mask when around or cleaning rodent-infested areas, and to open any windows or doors for at least 30 minutes beforehand to increase ventilation. Spray the area thoroughly with a 10% bleach solution or a commercial disinfectant. Let it sit for 5 minutes. Next, clean the area with paper towels, then throw them away in a covered garbage can that is regularly emptied. Before removing gloves, wash your gloved hands with soap and water or with a disinfectant, and then after removing gloves, wash your hands again with soap and water. It's important to never sweep up or vacuum mouse droppings, since this can spread particles up into the air. Since hantavirus is found throughout New Mexico, awareness of these risks and how to reduce them is important for all New Mexicans. The New Mexico Department of Health extends our deepest condolences to the families and friends.
We are listening to officials in Santa Fe, New Mexico, for the first time informing the public of the cause of death for Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy Hackman. The officials saying that Betsy Hackman was tragically the first to pass away, likely on February 11th, the last time they say that they are aware of email communications between Betsy Hackman and another individual. They say that she died of natural causes. She suffered from hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, an incredibly rare pulmonary syndrome and infectious disease. It begins with flu-like symptoms, progresses rapidly to a more severe disease, and it is contracted, and you can contract the disease through interactions with rodents. In terms of how Gene Hackman passed away, according to these medical officials, Gene Hackman passed away. He had hypersensitive cardiovascular disease. He likely passed away after his wife on February 18th, the last time there was known activity from his pacemaker. Again, the two found inside their Santa Fe home, their bodies partially mummified. Of course, Gene Hackman, a two-time Oscar-winning actor, renowned in his industry. Again, the very sad news that he and his wife passed away in their home, his wife likely passing away first after contracting hantavirus, which is carried by rodents. Important to point out that you heard the medical official there say that they did conduct a risk assessment for the home of Gene Hackman. There were not rodents found to be in that home, but there were signs of entry in other structures outside of the house. We will continue to track any and all developments related to this. The officials did say that both of their families asking for privacy, understandably, at this time. We want to turn now to the other big story that we are tracking today, the growing uncertainty facing the economy, consumers, and workers, as the Trump administration's actions and reactions sow chaos here in Washington and on Wall Street. The Labor Department reported this morning that the U.S. added 151,000 new jobs last month, the first full month of President Trump's second term. The numbers came in just shy of expectations and largely do not account for recent government layoffs and buyouts. The president touted the numbers earlier today, even as members of his economic team acknowledged more volatility could be on the way, with the administration looking to fire more government workers and slash spending.
How concerned are you that the large-scale federal government layoffs will weaken the labor market? How concerned are you?
The large-scale fentanyl what?
The federal government layoffs will impact the labor market, will weaken the labor market.
Oh. No, I think the labor market's going to be fantastic, but it's going to have high-paying manufacturing jobs as opposed to government jobs. We had too many people in government. You can't just do that. We had many too many. This is for 40 years. You know, this isn't just now. This built up and got worse and worse, and they just hire more and more people.
Now, those comments coming after a wild week that included the president on Tuesday imposing sweeping tariffs on imports from Canada, Mexico, and China. One day later, the president then announced a one-month exemption from his tariffs for U.S. automakers. And then one day after that, announcing a one-month exemption on some additional imports from Canada and Mexico before warning of new tariffs on Canada today. Here's the president being pressed in the Oval Office today by my colleague Peter Alexander about the impact of all of that uncertainty.
How much disturbance are you willing to accept in the near term as a function of that? And to set expectations, how long should Americans expect things to cost a bit more?
Well, so far, Peter, there hasn't been very much because these numbers are coming out. We're here for just a little over 4 weeks. And these are fantastic numbers. I was watching some of the reports this morning. They were surprised. There could be some disturbance, a little bit of disturbance.
The president also defended the confusion caused by his decisions during a new interview with Fox News' Maria Bartiromo.
I think CEOs want to see predictability. They say, look, I have to speak with shareholders. I've got to make plans for CapEx spending. I can't if it's 20% one day and then it's off for a month and it's 25%.
Yeah.
So can you give us a sense of whether or not we are going to get clarity for the business community?
Well, I think so. But, the tariffs could go up as time goes by, and they may go up. And, I don't know if it's predictability. I think
so that's not clarity.
No, I think that they say that. It sounds good to say. But for years, the globalists, the big globalists, have been ripping off the United States. They've been taking money away from the United States. And all we're doing is getting some of it back.
And the uncertainty of this moment stretches well beyond America's borders. The news of the tariffs first being enacted on Tuesday prompted Canada's prime minister to issue a dire warning to his country that the U.S. was trying to weaken its economy to make it easier to annex their territory. Joining me now is NBC News White House correspondent Aaron Gilchrist, NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung, and NBC News senior White House correspondent Garrett Hake, who is live for us in Toronto. Thank you all for being here this afternoon. Aaron, let me start with you. What have you learned from the president and the White House today about this back and forth over tariffs?
Well, I think the back and forth is going to continue in some ways, Kristen. We thought maybe we would get a little bit of clarity from the president today, and I think things didn't get clearer, perhaps a bit muddier. We heard the president reference today in his remarks about these tariffs that there could be potentially more tariffs on Canada in particular as it relates to lumber and dairy products. He suggested that the current policy around those items are hurting U.S. dairy farmers and that he would want to see more parity with the Canadians as it relates to those particular items. And this is, I think, as you talked about, we've been going back and forth, at least for the past week, really for the last several weeks, about tariffs being on and then off and then on again and maybe reduced a little bit in some places. We saw that happen for automakers, a delay in tariffs on products that were important to them. And then again, yesterday, we learned more about the idea that products, goods and services that were under the USMCA would not experience these tariffs for about a month when we know reciprocal tariffs are supposed to go into effect around the globe. And so those things, as you noted in your lead up to that bit of the interview with Maria Bartiromo, are really things that are still creating and leading to and furthering the instability and the uncertainty about how things are going to settle. We heard the Canadian Prime Minister, Kristen, say that he expects that the trade war is going to continue for the foreseeable future. And so that, I think, tells us something about what to expect going forward, that while there may be spaces where some of these things are pulled back, at least temporarily, the expectation is, at least for the Canadians, that they're going to continue to see some degree of back and forth for some time to come.
I think you're absolutely right, particularly with the president signaling that in October he could impose reciprocal, or in April, rather, the president could impose reciprocal tariffs. The market on track for its worst week since September. How is the president reacting to this slide? Is he, are administration officials getting jittery at all?
Well, no. To be blunt about it, the president said that he's not watching the stock market as he's making these decisions, these economic decisions that he wants to be making, that he has been making over the last several days. We know that the other members of his administration who've been out doing interviews and talking about the current situation have indicated that their concerns, they don't seem to be particularly concerned about the movement that we've been seeing in the stock market today. They feel as though the economic policies and ideas that President Trump is putting forward, they take sort of the long view on these things, and their belief is that in the long term, things will be better. They express that they understand there's some discomfort that people are anticipating in the short term and that there may be an increase in prices on certain goods and services in the short term. Their belief, though, is that in the long term, it will benefit the American economy and lead to greater wealth for folks in this country. And I think, Brian can maybe get into it a little bit more, but there are businesses, large businesses in this country that are fearful about the idea that prices go up, people are less likely to spend money, and that's going to hurt businesses as well, Kristen.
You're absolutely right. And the CEOs warning they will have to increase prices. Aaron Gilchrist, outside of the White House for us, thank you so much. Appreciate it, Aaron. Brian, let me with that go to you. I think the word of the week is uncertainty, right? What did all of this uncertainty mean for Wall Street, for Main Street, and what are you watching moving forward?
Yeah, well, I think, it's unequivocally a fact that we are more uncertain here on this Friday than we were going into this week on Monday. And that's because on Monday, when the tariffs weren't in effect, by the way, we were worrying about what the impact of these 25% tariffs would be. We got the tariffs, and then we got a pare back in those tariffs for one sector. And then it was kind of broadened out to other sectors as well. Again, those that are compliant under the USMCA, which the Trump administration negotiated in the first term. But if you're a business, you're going, OK, well, even if I am exempt right now, you only get 4 weeks of that exemption. So we're just going to have this conversation all over again the first week of April. If you're a business that's trying to plan around that, you have no more certainty now than you did in the beginning of this week, Kristen.
And of course, we see the board behind you. Jobs, jobs, jobs. We got the jobs report. It was lower than expectations. What did we learn, and what are the potential implications of that, Brian?
Yeah, and a few caveats to these numbers. It is the first report that reflects anything that we've seen from the Trump administration because of the survey period. It was the middle of February. The report prior to that covered the period prior to inauguration. But there wasn't really anything from this that tells us about the substantial impact of either the tariffs or necessarily the DOGE cuts. I'll explain that in a second. But first, the unemployment rate at 4.1% for the month of February. That's basically around the same as what it was in the final months of the Biden administration. So not too much to be read from that front. But as you mentioned, that headline number, 151,000 jobs added in the month of February. That was below the 170,000 that economists had been expecting for that month. But if you kind of look at the average over the 12 months prior, that's kind of in line with that pace that we had seen anyway. So it's basically in line with, again, what we've been seeing. Now, of course, when we talk about the changes by industry, what is interesting, and I'll get to the federal government bit in a second, I imagine we'll want to talk about that. Healthcare was the major driver of job gains, Kristen, adding over 50,000. Manufacturing marginally higher as well, but leisure and hospitality, this was driving a lot of the post-pandemic recovery, actually contracting. That's the third month in a row that's been the case for that industry.
That, and you look at that federal government number as well. Obviously, that's a big one. Talk about how the DOGE layoffs, which, again, were not factored into this report, what that could mean about next month's job report and the one after that.
Yeah, and it likely wasn't part of this because the DOGE cuts were really ramping up in the latter parts, the middle of February, which was probably after the survey period when these numbers were gathered. But nonetheless, we did see 10,000 in terms of a contraction in federal government employment. Again, maybe not too much to be read of that with regards to DOGE. But as we look towards the next month, again, maybe that next March jobs report, which we'll get in about 4 weeks, will reflect that. Again, what the White House has said, is that 75,000 federal workers accepted that fork in the road offer. As a fraction of the amount of federal employees that are out there, though, I just want to baseline here. There are 3 million federal employees. So this is just a fraction of that, really just kind of small beans there. But then lastly, as a portion of the overall U.S. workforce, federal employees only make up 1.5%. So we're talking about a fraction of a much larger number. Important context as we think about those DOGE cuts in the next jobs report.
Brian Chung, you have been with us throughout the week. Tells you just how much news there has been on the economy. Thank you so much. Appreciate it very much. Garrett, I want to turn to you. You spoke to Ontario Premier Doug Ford about these tariffs. He was very upset about them when we spoke to him on Monday. The prospects of the tariffs, what did he tell you today?
Well, Kristen, he's still fired up today. Doug Ford thinks that this is essentially Donald Trump trying to destroy the Canadian economy. And he feels like it's a 5-alarm fire that needs a response from Canada. And they're kind of getting it across the country. There's a federal government response here. There's a provincial government response. And there's a response of everyday Canadians who we've been talking to all day, who are really having a rally around the flag kind of moment. Patriotism is up. The Buy Canadian movement is at the front of people's minds. And Ford is digging in and expecting this to go on for quite some time.
What do you know, Garrett, about President Trump's interactions with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau? We know that they've had some pretty heated phone calls.
Yeah, that's right. And Ford told me he spoke to Trudeau immediately after that phone call, and that Trudeau described the language as colorful. Kristen, we both know this is a president who favors four-letter words from time to time. I think it's a pretty fair assumption some were deployed here in a relationship between Trump and Trudeau that has really fallen apart in this second Trump term. It wasn't great in the first. It's quite terrible now, but Trudeau's only going to be in office for a few more days. And I think it's the hope of certainly Premier Ford and some of the Canadians that we talked to today that whoever the next prime minister is here in Canada, and it's still a bit of an open question after Trudeau's party has recovered as he's been on the way out the door, what party that, this next PM will be in, that whoever it is will be able to forge a new personal relationship with Donald Trump. As we've talked about so many times, Trump views all diplomacy as personal, one-on-one between him and foreign leaders. Almost any different Canadian leader will get some degree of a fresh start with Trump, and that might be important to improving the brewing trade war that's happening here. Yeah,
it's a really great point. Let's talk about another point of tension between President Trump and Prime Minister Trudeau, which is this talk of making Canada a 51st state. He, of course, floated this to the Prime Minister when they were having dinner at Mar-a-Lago. Everyone kind of brushed it off, but it's been clear in the weeks and months since that President Trump seems to be somewhat serious about it. What are Canadians, what are the folks telling you about whether or not they're taking this seriously?
Yeah, the Canadians I talked to say to them this started as a joke and something that they could kind of laugh off. Then it became a conspiracy. There's no way he's really serious about it, but what if he were? Now it's something that I think has created a bit of nationalist sentiment here in Canada. Folks are furious. They're really dug in on this idea that they're nobody's 51st states. They are Canadian. There's a new ad on social media that's gone a bit viral here that's a callback to an old Molson beer ad from like 20 years ago, but it has this Canadian, I will do this justice in describing it, but I'll post it on X for people who are curious. This guy basically standing up for Canadian patriotism, listing all the things that make Canada Canada and arguing that it's not just some imaginary line drawn between two countries. It's a real line, a real border, a real cultural difference, and they're not going to be anybody's 51st state. They're going to stay Canadian. That's been a universal sentiment from everyone I've talked to on the ground here in Toronto.
Well, we will look to your X account for that. Garrett Hake, thank you. Great reporting, great interview. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much for bringing it to us. Joining me now is Betsy Stevenson, who served on President Obama's Council of Economic Advisors and was chief economist at the Labor Department. She's now a professor of economics at the University of Michigan's Ford School of Public Policy. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Great to talk with you today.
Michigan is obviously one of the states that is most impacted by these tariffs. What has the reaction been there in your home state?
Oh, I think there's a lot of fear and concern because we have an auto industry that is just, an enormous part of the state economy. And it's one that has developed over many decades to go seamlessly across the border. There may be those cultural differences with Canada, but economically, Michigan is very integrated with Canada, with, cars and auto parts crossing back and forth multiple times. We can't do that if there's a 25% tariff. And certainly a month is not enough time to, completely rebuild the auto industry. And so, we expect layoffs if these tariffs eventually go through. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who are waking up every morning wondering if today's the day that they're going to get laid off.
I guess to that point, what is the bigger concern, the tariffs themselves or the uncertainty that's creating, as you're mapping out here, its own ripple effect?
I love that question because, uncertainty is terrible, but certainty that we have huge tariffs is also terrible. So I certainly prefer the uncertainty of this week where the tariffs came on and then they went away again. And if they come on again, I hope they go away again. That's, my preference would be a stable environment with low tariffs. But it's not clear to me that we solve the problem if we just get to the high tariffs and we're there. Now, somebody might argue and say, no, Betsy, you're wrong, because the problem is all this uncertainty means that the businesses aren't doing the investing in the United States. Trump wants to do this in order to encourage manufacturing investment, but we can only really make those investments if we know for sure that these tariffs are going to last a very, very long time. But the reality is, Trump can't guarantee how long these tariffs are going to last. Even if he puts them on next week, we don't know that they're going to last more than a month or more than a year. And that is going to make it hard for him to see the kind of investment that he wants. Because what he essentially wants is for companies to say, boy, this 25% difference in prices is so big that we can take a loss by building, plants and factories that are very expensive for us to run in the U.S. And I just don't know how much investment he'll actually get out of that, because, at the end of the day, that means charging consumers higher prices, and consumers might just choose to buy less. Because if the prices you're facing at the store are up 25%, you're probably going to buy less.
Yeah. Well, and of course, the big promise the president has made is that he's going to lower prices. I wonder how long people will give him to actually do that. I want to get your reaction to something that the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, said about the economy, the economic outlook, just this morning. Take a listen.
Could we be seeing that this economy that we inherited starting to roll a bit? Sure. And look, there's going to be a natural adjustment as we move away from public spending to private spending. The market and the economy have just become hooked. We've become addicted to this government spending, and there's going to be a detox period.
What's your reaction? Do you agree with that assessment by the Treasury Secretary?
I think that the Treasury Secretary is doing what he needs to do to start covering the tracks of the uncertainty and chaos that Trump is sowing in the economy. You also heard them claim today that there was a lot of private sector job growth, and under President Biden it had been all government employees. That's simply not true. Under President Biden, we added around 10 million private sector jobs, and very, very few federal government jobs. So, we had an economy that was strong in the private sector. I hope it continues to be strong in the private sector. But for example, in the years coming out of the pandemic, we had the fastest rate of new business formation that we had seen this century in the United States. So to try to declare that we were hooked on government spending when we're in a period of the fastest rate of new business formation we'd seen this century, there's something that just isn't matching up there. And I think what they're trying to do is get their story straight for the inevitable slowdown that you see as everybody, pulls back, waiting for the uncertainty to resolve.
Betsy Stevenson, thank you so much for your insights. This should be an ongoing conversation because, as you say, there are more twists and turns undoubtedly to come. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Great.
Up next, thank you. You too. Coming up next, chaos, cuts, and the cabinet. It's been a busy week of Oval Office updates, mass layoffs, and economic volatility. We'll dig into the politics and the fallout of it all. The panels next. Welcome back. For the first time since President Trump and Elon Musk began their aggressive high-speed efforts to slash the federal workforce, we are seeing signs that President Trump wants to slow down at least a little bit. After meeting yesterday behind closed doors with members of the cabinet and Elon Musk, President Trump praised DOGE but said staffing cuts need to be more precise.
I want the cabinet members to keep good people. I don't want to see a big cut where a lot of good people are cut. I want the cabinet members to keep the good people, and the people that aren't doing a good job, that are unreliable, don't show up to work, etc., those people can be cut.
Now, according to new reporting from the New York Times, citing 5 people with knowledge of that meeting between the president, Musk and the cabinet, there was a blow up in the room between Musk and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, as well as a back and forth between Musk and Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy. NBC's Gabe Gutierrez asked the president about the meeting just moments ago in the Oval Office and said there is, quote, no clash between Musk and Rubio. Okay, well, we'll delve into this. Joining me now on set, Rhonda Colvin, senior reporter at The Washington Post, Ashanti Golar, Democratic strategist and president of Emerge, and former Pennsylvania Republican Congressman Charlie Dent. He's now an executive director and vice president at the Aspen Institute. Thanks all for being here on this very busy Friday. Rhonda, let me start with you. The New York Times has 5 sources around this reporting, and what's notable is that they report that President Trump in the meeting said he does want Elon Musk to start taking a scalpel to these cuts and not a chainsaw. What do you make of the fact that for the first time we're really seeing the president put somewhat of a fence around Elon Musk?
I think we've been wondering really since the election and maybe even before the election if there would be a point where Elon Musk may wear out his welcome, if there would be a clash, because we do know from even watching the first Trump administration, he certainly isn't the type to want someone to overshadow him and appear to be in the lead. So I think publicly what we saw last week with the cabinet meeting is that everyone clapped for Elon Musk. Even Trump said you can leave if you don't like the Doge cuts. But behind the scenes, it appears there is a little bit of palace intrigue, that cabinet officials are thinking he is overstepping, which actually matches with public sentiment.
Yeah, it's a great point. Charlie, you know, it's so interesting because when the administration first got underway, the big question was, how long is this relationship between Trump and Musk going to last? People who are familiar with them say they actually get along quite well. But how much stock do you put in the fact that the president does seem to be saying for the first time, hey, wait a minute, you've got to work with cabinet secretaries, and the cabinet secretaries get to take the lead here?
Well, I think the president has sent mixed messages. He said that the cabinet secretaries and the agency heads are now in charge of the staff reductions. But, you know, if you don't do such a good job, well, then Elon's going to step in. And I can see why there was a clash between Rubio and Musk. Musk, he put USAID, a related agency to the State Department, in the wood chipper. Totally blew it up, an agency that Marco Rubio has always supported. He has put it in there, so I can see why Marco Rubio is pretty hot about this, since he should have some jurisdiction over all this because it affects his mission at the State Department.
Yeah, to be a fly on the wall in that meeting, Ashanti. What do you make of how Democrats have been responding to these cuts so far? Do you think they have a robust enough response, and do you think there's going to be a rally behind this idea of potentially trying to shut down the government over it?
We have seen a response from government. I just want to go to Congressman Al Green, his censure. What was he mad about? Cuts to Medicaid, to other programs. And at the end of the day, these really are eliminations. They're eliminations of jobs, they're eliminations of programs that not only help Americans survive, but thrive. So this ruckus that we see from Democrats, you know, acting up in committee, what they are doing is fighting because they want to make sure that we don't have these huge eliminations that are going to hurt Americans.
Since you bring it up, Ashanti, I have to ask you, and I'll get the table to respond as well. What did you make of what we saw from Congressman Al Green? I mean, it seemed to me that what was happening inside the chamber was so fascinating because to some extent it was a microcosm of the disunity right now within the Democratic Party, that there's no clear strategy for this moment.
I think that the Democrats, they are looking at their districts, what the people need, but still finding the moment. But when we look at Congressman Al Green, this is a man where honestly, he's like, I'm just going to be about it. I have been serving. I am older. I have really nothing to lose. I'm going to take this moment. And for me, and I know other people I've talked to, they appreciated it. Just seeing that fire, that passion, someone literally saying to the president, who clearly has a disability. He has his cane. He was with his cane, is saying this is going to impact people. We saw one of our Emerge alums, Melanie Stansberry, with her sign saying this is not normal. So what I'm seeing is Democrats taking different tactics that are getting attention.
And Charlie, let me play you something that the chair of the NRCC, Richard Hudson, said after he met with Elon Musk about these cuts earlier this week. Take a look.
Because I think it's real important that Republican congressmen are accessible to their constituents, that they're creating formats where they can answer questions, where they can interact with their constituents. I think that's a really important, fundamental part of our job. Unfortunately, the Democrat Party has hijacked these in-person town halls. Well, I don't deny that, but I can tell you I'm thrilled that that DOJ is exposing the spending. They're mapping where the taxpayer dollars are going so that we as lawmakers can make actual decisions about, do we think that's a useful thing for taxpayer dollars to be funding.
So he's not denying there's been some real opposition to these cuts, whether it's in the chamber with Congressman Green or at these town halls. Charlie, do you think that members are more jittery than they're letting on, given the fact that they are hearing about it? Fine, they're saying this is just Democrats acting out at these town halls. It's still their constituents.
I think they're terrified. I mean, they're going to their. I mean, I've seen this before. I was in Congress in 2017. We saw something similar. I held town halls during health care. Democrats had the same problem in 2010 during the Obamacare debates. These types of uprisings at these town halls are largely organic. They are not created. People are angry. They're hot, and so I think many Republican members do understand they are vulnerable to viral moments when they have these town halls. So they're going to try to talk to their constituents in other ways. It may not be advisable, but politically it might be safer for them. But this is a huge problem for Republicans now.
Rhonda, what are you hearing from your sources on the Hill, both in terms of Democrats' response to the cuts this week and Republicans publicly, at least, really digging in and saying, no, we support these cuts?
Well, from Democrats, I've heard that they are going to try to keep revving up a grassroots effort at the constituents level to make sure that, American voices are heard, that these cuts are unpopular in their district, and they want that to be seen. From Republicans, we're hearing pretty much what the clip you played, I'm hearing that exact thing, where publicly they're saying, these cuts are good, we need government efficiency, but behind closed doors, specifically what we heard from the meeting that Elon Musk had with House and Senate Republicans, that they're concerned because this is a hard sell back at home when they're facing cuts. People are calling their offices nonstop. So this all, every week feels a little different, but it also feels the same.
Yeah, and of course it all comes, Charlie, against the backdrop of this volatile week on Wall Street. CEOs saying they're going to have to hike up prices. President Trump pulling back on the tariffs. A lot of uncertainty.
Well, of course. What businesses want most of all, certainty, predictability, and stability. Yes, they like lower taxes. Yes, they like less regulation. But they need stability. And these tariffs, as everybody knows, are going to lead to higher prices for Americans, and it will be very disruptive to American manufacturing. Ask the auto sector, because what we import are oftentimes inputs for what we make. And the farmers are going to probably bear the heaviest burden with all this. So producers are going to suffer. It's not going to help American manufacturing, despite all the nonsense we keep hearing.
Ashanti, does this give Democrats an opening? I'm going to be interviewing Senator Slotkin on Sunday. I'm going to talk to her about the messaging. Yeah. Do you expect this to become part of the core message that we're hearing from Democrats?
Absolutely. We are seeing it. People are feeling it. Everyday Americans, the impact of these tariffs. And the congressman was talking about manufacturing. Bloomberg just reported that in 30 years, we're seeing the highest rates of Americans missing their monthly car payments. That's letting us know that money has to go to everyday basics. It has to go to food. It has to go to keeping a roof over their heads. So he's talking about manufacturing and cars. People can barely afford the cars that they have now. So this is definitely going to be something huge that you are seeing from our Democrats, because Americans are angry. We're busy. We don't got time to just have Democrats go to town halls and cause a ruckus. Like, we're out here organizing. Women are running.
Yeah, and of course the economy, the top issue still for voters. Guys, thanks so much. Great conversation. Rhonda, Ashanti, and Charlie. Appreciate it. Coming up after the break, meet the special envoy at the center of the administration's top foreign policy priorities as the U.S. holds new talks with Ukraine and Hamas. New reporting live from Moscow is next. You're watching Meet the Press now. Stay with us. Welcome back. President Trump today threatened to impose expanded sanctions and tariffs on Russia until it reaches a peace agreement with Ukraine. It comes after Russia launched a massive aerial assault on Ukraine overnight. targeting the country's critical infrastructure, including its energy grid. In total, President Zelensky says Russia fired nearly 70 missiles and almost 200 drones on multiple facilities in 4 different regions. But while speaking to reporters in the Oval Office today, the president signaled talks with Russia on a peace deal were going well, but said the talks with Ukraine have been, quote, difficult. Despite this, U.S. and Ukrainian officials are set to meet in Saudi Arabia next week to discuss first steps towards a peace agreement to end the war. Among the officials expected to participate in that meeting, President Trump's special envoy for the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, who is emerging as a critical figure in all aspects of the Trump administration's foreign policy. NBC News chief international correspondent Keir Simmons has more.
He's everywhere. From the Oval Office to freeing hostages in Gaza to meeting with the Russians about Ukraine.
It was positive, upbeat, constructive.
Steve Witkoff's official title is Middle East Envoy, but President Trump simply calls him my dear friend and a deal maker.
Steve Witkoff, everybody, done a great job in the Middle East. Really great.
Witkoff was one of the first people President Trump spoke to after his attempted assassination. And on the day of the second attempted assassination, they were playing golf together. That deep friendship, now a working relationship.
I am constantly reminded of the privilege it is to serve under the leadership of my boss, President Donald J. Trump.
After the election, Witkoff spent months flying around the Middle East on his own dime, according to Senator Lindsey Graham. By January, mobbed by well-wishers in Israel's Hostage Square, NBC News got past his bodyguards to find him fighting to stay focused on freeing more hostages.
One is coming out tomorrow.
One is coming out tomorrow. And losing his son, Andrew, to opioids enables him, he says, to relate to families who lose children. A millionaire New York property developer, he's not a trained diplomat, but apparently does have a knack for diplomacy. Shaking former President Biden's hand at Donald Trump's inauguration, he had worked closely with Biden's team, while always diligently giving President Trump the lion's share of the credit, like here with hostage families.
The president stands with you.
The two men are in lockstep. At the inauguration, Witkoff echoing the president's foreign policy.
We are done carrying the financial burden for nations that are unwilling to fund their own progress. The days of blank checks are over.
But there's also growing criticism. It was after Witkoff's visit to Gaza that President Trump called for the Palestinian enclave to be, quote, cleaned out. Witkoff supports that policy. Many call it ethnic cleansing, while others have accused Witkoff of being too close to Qatar. He did a New York property deal with the Qataris. And when Witkoff flew to Moscow to free American hostage Mark Fogel, he says he also held a private meeting with President Putin, with only translators present.
The meeting ended, and I looked at my watch, and it was close to 3.5 hours that we were in there. We just had a great discussion, me and President Putin.
And NBC's chief international correspondent, Keir Simmons, joins me now. What a fantastic report, Keir. I do want to start right there, with your deep look into Steve Witkoff. He will be attending those talks with Ukraine and Saudi Arabia next week. Is it your sense that his portfolio is actually expanding beyond just the special envoy to the Middle East?
Oh, no doubt about it. Listen, I think his key attribute is his closeness to President Putin himself. You know, he's this kind of soft-spoken, genteel kind of seeming guy. When you speak to him, he seems so friendly, but he's also the man who says the same kind of things that President Trump says, the often kind of mind-bending, and did he really say that kind of stuff? Just in the past few days, saying that the US and Israel may act together to target Hamas. When it comes to those talks with the Ukrainians and with the Russians here, I'll tell you honestly, Kristen, when you talk to Russian officials here in Moscow, they are quite disparaging about him. They talk about him as not knowing very much about the situation. Now, the Russians would say that, of course. They are tough negotiators, and that's what the Trump administration is going to find in the weeks and months ahead. So it doesn't necessarily reflect Steve Witkoff's ability. But I think what he is able to achieve, I think the jury is still out on a number of levels.
I think you're right about that. And you take me to my next question. There are going to be these diplomatic talks in Saudi Arabia, U.S. officials with Ukrainian officials. It comes as the president's threatening potentially more sanctions against Russia. How is Moscow responding to this, Kieran? We have less than a minute.
Yeah, you know, I think that the Kremlin is probably as confused as many, because just today, President Trump, on the one hand, as you say, saying that he finds it easier to negotiate with the Russians, on the other hand, saying they're pounding Ukraine and that they need to stop, or he will put in wider sanctions. The reality is, this is the real reality here in Russia, Kristen, is that when you talk to ordinary Russians and Russian officials, they say they do want peace, but they want it on their terms. President Trump is going to find this a tough negotiation.
All right, Keir Simmons, fantastic reporting as always. Thank you. We are back on Monday with more Meet the Press Now. And if it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press on your local NBC News station. I'll have exclusive interviews with Senator Alyssa Slotkin and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutkin. The news continues with Yasmin Vesuvian in for Hallie Jackson right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.